Hi, my name is Chris Parkhurst. I'm a documentary filmmaker, and I'm also the host of the Documentary Life podcast, a show that spans 140 episodes, has been downloaded in over 135 countries, and I've been producing for about 5 years. I decided to put each and every episode up here onto YouTube to sort of expand the audience, and as we say in the show, maybe inspire and inform some more doc filmmakers, hopefully like yourself. In the episodes, you may find some older, maybe outdated URLs, in particular any of the documentary filmmaking courses that we do offer online. If you have any questions about the URLs, simply look in the show notes on this page, here on this YouTube page, and that'll be able to take you where you need to go to. Other than that, I hope you enjoy the show, and it's great to have another listener to the Documentary Life. Have a great day.
I really have this great sense of trying to help the filmmaker out, and having this film festival, the Melbourne Documentary, is a great apparatus to help filmmakers.
There are moments of transcendence when you just feel like you can do no wrong. You feel telepathic. You're pointing the camera at the right thing and everything works, you know. It's about being in the moment, and that's what I enjoy. That's what excites me.
Hello and welcome to The Documentary Life, a show that sets out to inspire and inform you on how to best live and lead your own documentary life. I am your host, Chris G. Parkhurst, and this is episode number 28. And it is brought to you by Barong Films, proud creators of documentary film, the Documentary Life podcast, and the Documentary Academy, our industry-changing A to Z documentary filmmaking program that will transform you into the documentary filmmaker that you've always wanted to be. Find out more at thedocumentarylife.com/academy. What you are about to listen to is part one of a very special two-part episode that we've put together about the world of the Documentary Film Festival, as seen through the eyes of both the filmmaker as well as the festival director. In this series, we will meet with the director of the Melbourne Documentary Film Festival, Lyndon Stone, who will discuss, among other things, how he first decided to put together a documentary film festival, some of the highlights of the upcoming 2017 event, as well as a few tips on how a documentary filmmaker might best apply to a film festival like MDFF. We will also have the pleasure of speaking with one of New Zealand's most respected documentary filmmakers, Costa Botes, whose film Act of Kindness is one of the films selected for inclusion into the MDFF program. Costa spoke about the rather unique way in which this film came to be, how and why film festivals are a key component to a doc filmmaker's career, and he offers some first-hand insight into how some film festivals make their selections. In part two of the series, we will speak with both Lyndon as well as Richard Wyllie, a doco filmmaker who makes his living in the world of broadcast docs, and who also has a film in this year's MDFF. It's called 5 Days of Lesvos, and it is his first independent documentary, and it's making some serious waves on the film festival circuit, including Raindance, where it was nominated for Best Feature Documentary, and it was also nominated for Best Documentary at the National Film Awards in the UK. So thanks again for tuning into what is part one of our special series that takes a look at the Documentary Film Festival. Why don't we begin by meeting Lyndon Stone, director for the Melbourne Documentary Film Festival. How I came to reach out to you, Lyndon, is, of course, via the festival, which you are a director of, the Melbourne Documentary Film Festival. It was, I think it was about a month ago when someone from, I'm assuming from your staff, had reached out to the Documentary Life, had reached out to me via Twitter, and had said, hey, have you thought about MDFF or any of their lineup, having them on the show? And to be honest, the timing was serendipitous, Lyndon, because my wife, who helps produce the show, my wife and I had been talking about doing a show exclusively about film festivals, and both from the filmmaker's perspective, and then as well as from the sort of insider's perspective, which of course would be where you would come in. Yeah. And then of course one thing led to another, and now I've reached out to you, and as you and I have now discussed, we're kind of broadening this episode, and it's a special episode here at the Documentary Life for us because we're really, as I mentioned to you, we want to kind of embody what it is from the filmmaker's perspective to be entering a festival, how and why and what and where that encompasses, as well as sort of that insider perspective, which is oh so valuable for someone who's trying to knock down sort of the golden gates of the film festival circuit. And hopefully that's where you're going to come in and help us out today.
Yeah, sure. Sounds good.
So, Lyndon, why don't you give me a little bit of background and your relationship to film?
Well, I guess, when I first started with film, it's mainly as a volunteer. I did study in Wellington, New Zealand, film, but largely it was more theoretical.
Right.
And I really wanted to get the practical. So I volunteered first started out with Doc Edge in New Zealand, which is New Zealand's only international documentary film festival. And it was mainly to get experience in film festivals and film and to meet filmmakers and stuff like that. And yeah, that's where I got involved in the film festival circuit.
Okay.
And it's been almost like 10 years now. So it's been a great run, very diverse. I've worked through different genres like documentary, science fiction, horror, fantasy, indie, underground. And I've just got to meet some of the most wonderful and exciting and different filmmakers from all the different genres. But my first love is always documentary and indie filmmaking. But, meeting Steve James was great. Lloyd Kaufman,
It's funny how many of us have met Lloyd. I think that's part of his success is he's such a pretty, like a gregarious and outgoing guy, right?
Yeah. He's a great person. But I really have this great sense of trying to help the filmmaker out, and having this film festival, the Melbourne Documentary, is a great apparatus to help people, particularly Australian filmmakers, emerging filmmakers. As we know, Chris, with documentary, they really struggle to get over the $1 million mark at the box office. So having a dedicated documentary film festival is a great apparatus to kind of help people out, whether it's international people who want to showcase in Melbourne, or local Australian filmmakers, to encourage them to keep going and to hone their craft. Yeah. So it's all very positive. Yeah.
So you worked as a volunteer for years at other film festivals.
Yeah.
How did what was it for you that brought you to the decision? You know what? Hey, I think I can do this. I think I can put one on myself. Did you see a need for the MDFF, and how did you come to that?
I wanted to kind of to help filmmakers out, and also to challenge myself to create something from scratch. And as I say, there isn't a dedicated documentary film festival in Melbourne itself.
Okay, right.
So I saw a real need for that, to create that from scratch, to see if all the skills that I had acquired over up to about maybe 10 years, whether I could actually create something from scratch. And obviously my wife Susanna encouraged me to do that. And to see what I could do. And also, I wanted to kind of use it, as I say, as this apparatus to help people, whether it's volunteers to get experience in the industry, like curators, marketing, social media, so that they can get some kind of experience and then go into the film industry, So, and also for filmmakers to graduate and to get the skills and experience by showcasing in Melbourne. So it's been very, very successful, the Melbourne Documentary Film Festival, both critically with the critics and also commercially. It's been, a great little experiment. We do a lot of different things than, traditional documentary film festivals. We start with a binge watch. So, kind of like Netflix, like people come along. It's like an opening day of documentary. We also use a bit of, we also use kind of non-divergent kind of ideas. As I say, I've worked through different genres, but we have like double features during the festival. A, for the consumer to get more value for money, and B, also like to attract more consumers into different sessions. So we have maybe two 1-hour documentaries together, almost like a drive-in, like a double feature.
Absolutely.
And we're just trying these different ideas to see, because the audience is becoming so discerning with video on demand, with television, with films. It's trying to use different and divergent ideas to see, what works and what doesn't. So it's a great experiment, this festival, to see. What a festival is and how it can grow and how different ideas can work, with it. Well, and from different genres too.
And to be honest, I'm actually shocked to hear that a city like Melbourne has not had its own dedicated documentary film festival. To say that you're the first, and MDFF is the first of its kind, that's really shocking. Why do you think that is?
Well, it's funny you say that. With Sydney and Tanner's, I think, just been going 5 years, as has Doc New York City,
right.
Which has just been 5 years. So we're still in that kind of, inception kind of stage with those kind of festivals. But I mean, you're right. If you go to North America, particularly in Canada, if you look at Europe, there's such a proliferation of documentary film festivals. But it's interesting, like places like Sydney and New York. I mean, it's only been 5 years since Doc New York City was created, and also Antenna in Sydney. But we're just another one that's just starting up. But I don't know why in those cities, which are very cosmopolitan, very highly educated, why they haven't really taken hold. You would think they've been going for 20 or 30 years. But
absolutely.
Yeah, it's interesting that it just haven't just within the last half decade started to kind of emerge. Yeah,
I think with the proliferation of film festivals, period, in the past 15 to 20 years, you just assume that every major city has one, and maybe they do for feature films, and maybe it's more specifically documentary film festivals are now catching up.
Well, I think there's a voracious appetite for, documentary. Particularly, I think a lot of people are very discerning by getting that online or through television.
Absolutely, right. That's right.
And it's interesting with the box office with documentary, because obviously, a lot of documentaries struggle to break that $1 million mark. If it was, action, comedy, science fiction, horror, they're making 40, 50, 60, $100 million. But with documentary, they're widely popular on Netflix, on TV, but on film festivals and, at the box office, they seem to kind of struggle to break that $1 million mark. And I'm always curious, again, coming back to that idea of challenging, of challenges, Chris, how to maybe market documentary, how to make it more, maybe more accessible to people. The other thing, just going back to, why I started this festival. I was actually in South Auckland. The movie was Tyson by James Marbeck.
Right.
And I was in South Auckland watching this documentary, and it was completely full, packed out. This was in Auckland, South Auckland, Manukau, and it was completely full of people.
Yes.
It was a very kind of blue collar kind of crowd and stuff like that. And I got to thinking, everyone kind of likes documentary, but not everyone goes to a film festival or go to a documentary at the theater. And I was just trying to figure, why that is, and trying to use different things. Like we use an art space, and we kind of try to create documentaries that would appeal to perhaps maybe a broader audience. So, and we're using different ideas. Like we use a lot of music documentaries this year, almost like a rock concert, So
I see that. Yes.
Just trying to do different things to maybe make documentary more accessible, fun, a bit divergent, and we'll see how we go. But so far, so good,
Well, I love it. I love it, Lyndon, because it's early days for you and MDFF, and so you have that. You have the luxury of being able to really experiment right now, and you can try new things each year, and that's really, really exciting. Yes,
it is. Yeah.
Good on you for doing this. Lyndon, let's move on now a little bit to what I had hearkened to earlier, which is I would love to give my listeners some insight into what is happening behind the scenes when they're applying to get their films into festivals. How aware should applicants be in the preference of programming for a film festival? So if you're going to recommend to someone who is applying to MDFF, let's use MDFF obviously here, and would you say that they should really, how acquainted should they be with the general programming?
Well, it's interesting because we do program what comes in through the door, So this year there's been a lot of documentaries on things like, refugees, migrants, immigrants, and stuff like that. We've got some great documentaries. Migrant Dreams. We've got 5 Days on Lesvos.
Right.
Mrs. Keats' Children. So we kind of intuitively program the themes that come in, and also try to marry that up with, what's happening in the greater narrative in Australia. What audiences in Australia like. We always try to look at themes of gentrification. We had a great one last year, Goodnight Brooklyn, the story of death by audio.
Yeah, great, right.
This year, we're looking at One Big Home about McMansions and trophy homes, So, and And in a roundabout kind of way, it does relate to Melbourne because, as I say, gentrification is something that is very central to Melbourne at the moment because it's expanding so quickly and so exponentially. How do you get that right? How do you preserve, historical buildings, but also be progressive? Is it even possible? So I like the themes that come out of the festival each year and themes and motives that will relate to Australia. So I always try to intuitively program we try to intuitively program documentaries that will appeal to a greater audience in Australia and things that relate to them, and that's again trying to connect to the audience with things that will interest them and actually are relevant to them. Yeah.
Do you encourage filmmakers to reach out to you directly and engage in some kind of dialogue, say before they submit their film? So, say a filmmaker has a question about the festival or about something about their film. Are you encouraging dialogue beforehand?
Well, a lot of people contact us. Like we get hundreds and hundreds of people inquiring about having their documentary submitted to us. So I guess it is that kind of narrative if it is a right fit for them and also the festival and stuff like that. So we do have these kind of these dialogues that do happen with filmmakers. Just to see if it is, a viable option for them and whether it's a right fit and just general questions about the festival. At the end of the day, we're just trying to, make sure that it's a filmmakers film festival. And so we try and do things like if people request, if they want it, we can look at stuff like, feedback. We look at things like, we've got the awards and stuff like that as kind of subsidies as well, and prizes and stuff like that from things like, Curiosity Stream, Doc Play. But yeah, as I say, we try to have a kind of like a filmmakers film festival where people can approach us, and we can have a dialogue about their film and whether it can compete or not. And sometimes for different reasons, some films may not be eligible to compete. It's about trying to find the right fit for both the filmmaker and the film festival and to strike that balance. Yeah.
Okay. Now what are you looking for specifically in someone's submission? And what are you looking for that's going to make someone stand out from the stack of films that you have or applications?
It comes back to storytelling and how they've told their story, how they've used like cinematography, how they've edited the film, how they've used different kind of mediums to tell that story. It really comes back to the way that they've told the story and how effectively they've told the story. But in terms of themes and motives, we've got such a broader range of documentaries. You probably had a look at the program there, Chris. We're not kind of prescriptive or have any kind of. We're very open-minded, with what comes through the door. We try to look at different things, but things that would, automatically kind of, I guess kind of we'd decline a documentary on would probably if it's kind of, freely available for the competition online, or if it was for the feature films, documentaries, and also if it were it's already had like a theatrical bow in Australia, and we do get a lot of people approached by that. Will I be able to do that? And because of our terms and conditions, we were unable to do those kind of things for the feature documentaries, for the competition. But as I say, we're very open-minded.
Yeah. Okay. So Lyndon, give my listeners, if you could, give my listeners a glimpse into the film selection process of MDFF, and I mean literally starting from the moment you or someone from your staff sort of receives the download of the film or the packet, or are you also receiving postal packages? What's the process someone's film goes through from that very beginning up until the moment of selection, through selection, I should say? We
have 6 to 8 curators. Majority of those are for short documentary. What we tend to do is we have a curation form where we have different aspects that we look at in terms of the film, and then we grade the film, and then towards the end of the festival submission period, we look to rank them and look for themes and motives and to put them all together in terms of the showcase for the festival. So it's Yeah, so we are volunteer run, and it's you're so humbled by people that holding down jobs or studying, and they do a lot of reviews and stuff like that. Whether they do 100 reviews or if they do 20 reviews in a month, you're just humbled by what they can do and when they can do it. So I'm never like hey, you've got this deadline. That's up to me. So I make sure that all the deadlines are met and stuff like that.
Okay.
But it's hard because it is a volunteer run film festival, but you're just thankful for the help you get and when you get it, So, but got some great curators who've, as I say, hold down jobs, who study and find the time to help, curate documentaries. I think it's a great job because, as I say, they get access to documentaries that sometimes they'll be the first people in Australia to see them, stuff from South by Southwest, stuff from Doc New York City. I think it's really exciting. I think it's a really cool job, yeah.
And so at the point, are you whittling down a number to say, 50 films, and then you whittle it down to 20 films? And then do you guys all get together in a room and do you have people pair off and sort of advocate for the films that they would like to see in the festival? How does it work towards the final selections? How do you get to that? What does that look like?
Yeah. Well, we look at the grades in terms of what they get, and then what we do is with this particular senior curators, we go through like a quality audit with them. So I'll go through them with the final list, and then we'll, as you say, we whittle those down to the final selections. So so that's basically kind of about what we do in terms of the process. So we grade the documentaries, and then we have this kind of final kind of quality audit where we go through as we move towards at the end of the day, the final call is mine, but what we do is to kind of whittle them down to the festival. Yeah, it takes a whole year, the whole process and stuff like that, from woe to go. But there's some amazing stuff out there. It's hard sometimes to turn down stuff that has premiered at Hot Docs. I have had filmmakers approach me and have premiered at Hot Docs. We just don't have the capacity at this stage. Correct. That's why I was a little bit interested in going online because it could help more filmmakers to showcase in Australia. But again, the thing is, a lot of people is I'm applying because I want to share it with an audience, not to be online. So it's interesting to try to to strike that balance with the filmmaker.
How many of the filmmakers, I guess, are you bringing into MDFF? And do you guys cover travel and accommodations? Like how does that work for the filmmaker?
Well, it is on a case-by-case basis. As I say, we're a small, kind of, as I say, volunteer-run film festival.
Exactly.
We try our best to accommodate. We've got, I guess this year, we've got Costa Botes who's coming out. We've got Jack Thompson, who's coming out, Greg Reeves, who's a producer in Sydney, Jack Pritchard coming out. But largely, as I say, we're still starting up. Sometimes with the funding bodies, they want to see you going for 3 or 5 years before they come on board. And when that kind of happens, I think we'll be able to do more with bringing more filmmakers out. But at this stage, we've been straight up on our film special sites. We don't cover flights.
Yes.
Accommodation we may be able to do.
Got it.
And that's exactly what we've done this year with people that have said, yep, I'm going to fly out. We've looked at ways that we can come to the party in terms of helping with accommodation and stuff like that. But it's hard because we would love to bring more people out, but we also have a budget as well. So it's trying to strike that balance. I think moving forward with the festival 3 to 5 years, it'll be a different story. But at this stage, we're still at that inception stage. So it's hard though because we'd love to bring more people.
Absolutely.
It's hard.
In all candor and frankness, do you think the major ones? Do you think are Hot Docs and Sundance? Are they Toronto International? Are they bringing people out completely on their own dime, or are they perhaps a select number of filmmakers are coming out that's paid for the festival? What's your guess?
Yeah, I think it would be. Yeah, I think it would be a bit of both. But I think if they were first starting out, I think they would probably be in the same position as I was.
That's what I would think.
It's hard if we had the funds, we would definitely do it. But at the moment, we're still starting up and making a sustainable model. So, but if the money was there, no question, do that. But I have been straight up on the film submission saying, look, we don't do flights. We can look at accommodation if you're selected. So, I think that's fair, at this stage. And then ideally what I'd like to do is, if we can have some sponsorship from, Melbourne funding bodies, is to use that to pay for the venues. Then we use other sponsorship in that to fly the people out. That's the kind of long-term kind of where we're tracking, So That's what I'd like to do anyway, yeah.
There are plenty of places online to learn how to do things like split the audio signals coming into your camera, or how to animate some of your still photos, or get some great tips on lighting your interview. Many blogs, YouTube videos, and of course podcasts where you can quickly grab an answer to a tech-related question. But what if there was one place where you could learn from beginning to end how to make a documentary film and how to become a doc filmmaker, how to raise money and build an audience for your doc, how to form strategic partnerships and launch your doc out into the world, and perhaps even, if you can imagine, make some money from it? Well, there is such a place, and it's called the Documentary Academy. Steph and I took 2 years to build out this comprehensive resource that takes you step by step from story creation and pre-production all the way to post-production, launch, and distribution. The Academy takes you through your doc filmmaking journey as your most confident, active, strategic, creative, focused, and articulate self. It is a step-by-step guide to empowerment in the documentary filmmaking world. We know what we have in the Documentary Academy. Now it's up to you to discover what you have as a doc filmmaker. Do that today by heading over to thedocumentarylife.com/academy. I shot a job a couple of years ago in Melbourne, and that's the first time I've been to Australia. First and only time I've spent time in Australia. And I loved the city. I absolutely loved the city, and I look forward to getting back there again someday, hopefully soon. I would love to attend, if not have a film at MDFF. Your lineup is tremendous. I wish that I could see all of those films. I wish I could attend this year. But in the interest of time, of course, with this podcast, we could dedicate the next year talking to all these filmmakers. But with this particular episode, as you know, we have a couple of directors who are going to be on, Costa Botes as well as Richard Wyllie. And we're honored and excited to have them on the show and to talk about both their films, Act of Kindness and then 5 Days of Lesvos. What was it about these guys that made you have to have this included in MDFF?
When I was looking at documentary, as I said, when we're talking about this declining audience, or this audience that's not coming into the cinema or to festivals, what I want to do is kind of bring kind of some cinematic kind of conventions to the festival. And with Act of Kindness from Costa Botes, what I really liked about the documentary is it's kind of like that. I don't know if you've seen that movie Lion, the Australian movie Lion.
I do know of it. I have not actually seen
Nicole
it yet.
Kidman. Yeah, I think you should watch it.
Okay.
It's kind of had that same kind of person on a personal odyssey, looking to search for someone who was very kind for them during the Rwanda troubles that were happening there.
Right.
And obviously, I know Costa is one of New Zealand's most well-known documentary filmmakers. So when I saw that was submitted, I was like, wow, this is great.
I came back to Rwanda with a plan. Not only was I going to find Johnson, I was going to make a film about it. I'd never made a documentary before. That didn't worry me. But there was one thing that did. Johnson was one man in 10 million. And all I knew was his first name.
It is by far not a typical documentary. And what I mean by that is it's not typical in the way the story is told. It's more found footage than anything else. And by the time that you got your hands on the footage, it had been shot, from what I understand, years prior. Why don't
That's
you help
right.
us, help my listeners understand what Act of Kindness is about and how you came on to the project?
Well, what it's about is a young New Zealander who had quite a scary, horrifying near-death experience in Burundi, which is in Eastern Africa. And he had escaped that situation with his life, and he still had his passport, but nothing else. He'd had everything else taken from him. And he ended up basically getting a lift into the next country, Rwanda. So he arrives in Rwanda in the middle of the night, gets dropped at the bus station there, and he had nothing. And he was also in, I would say, some level of post-traumatic shock, and became quite frightened. And then out of this sort of frightening situation, this man came up to him, a man who was crippled, looked like hell, and the guy comes up and he starts speaking in good English. And this young guy, who's a New Zealander, his name is Sven, he accepted an offer of help from this crippled beggar, because that's what he was. He was just begging in this square within the bus station, and ended up going home with this guy who introduced himself as Johnson. He only gave his one name, and Johnson, it turned out, lived in a homeless shelter attached to a church in the middle of Kigali in Rwanda.
Right. And
Sven basically lived with this guy for the next 4 or 5 days, and Johnson would go out during the day and beg, and then he'd spend 50 cents because that's all it took to buy Sven a meal. And while Sven was in the homeless shelter, he was also interacting with 38 other men, all of whom were crippled to some degree or another, all of them beggars, and all of them victims of the Rwandan genocide. What Sven was experiencing with these men was, I guess, the aftermath. He was seeing guys and hearing stories that were utterly horrific, and yet the spirit of these men was very strong. And when Johnson told him his story, it was just appalling. A story of terrible, terrible loss. And Sven was very moved by that. But meanwhile, he was in this situation where he had no money,
right,
and didn't know how he was going to get out of it. And Johnson's advice to him was, look, you've got to go and beg for a ride and get out of this country. And Sven had arranged a volunteer job in Uganda. That was the purpose of him being in Africa. He wanted to hitchhike across Africa and then end up in Uganda and do this job. So he thought, well, if I can get to Uganda, I'll be able to, get some help and reestablish connections with my family and get some money, and I'll be okay. And actually, that's what sort of happened. He got a ride. He got out of Rwanda. But what happened was he got that ride with very little notice, and he had no opportunity to say goodbye and thank you to this benefactor, this crippled man who had helped him through these few days. And that experience never left Sven. It kind of haunted him. And many years later, he had an opportunity to go back to Rwanda, and he decided almost at the last minute to take a camera and document his search for this guy who had helped him out. And all he wanted to do was just find him, just to see if he was okay, and I guess say a very belated thank you. So, Act of Kindness is a film about a guy looking for a guy, and he only knew his name. He only knew his first name,
right.
Johnson.
If anyone's seen Johnson, please give me a call. Yeah? This is how you get in touch. 08785212. With information. Information about Johnson.
He didn't know whether that was a first name or a surname. And Rwanda is a very crowded place. Like it's actually the most crowded country on earth. There's 10 million people in a tiny little postage stamp of a country. Sven's attempt to try and find this guy was probably pure folly. But he took that camera and he documented what he did every step of the way. And at the end, he had a plastic lunchbox full of DV tapes, but he didn't know what to do with it, and ended up, by a series of steps, he ended up back in New Zealand a few years later. And eventually he told his story at a pitching forum.
Oh.
And somebody who was there from our New Zealand Film Commission, which is our national funding body, heard that pitch and was really impressed. And they rang me up and they said, look, I just heard the most amazing story, and I think you should meet this guy because he obviously needs help.
I see.
Trying to do something for this footage, yeah. So that's where it started, where our relationship started. And boy, we went through a number of twists and turns and blind alleys and dead ends and followed red herrings. And but eventually I finally got it together and I figured it all out. It was one hell of a monkey puzzle, actually, once I got that box of film open and started looking at all the footage. It was pretty tricky stuff.
Costa, how many hours of footage did he have?
Well, not enough, actually. It was about 30.
Yeah.
I wish it was more like 60.
Sure.
And the trouble was there were a lot of ellipses, a lot of gaps, and a lot of the footage actually was shot not just by Sven, but by this lovely young man named Fabrice, who
indeed.
ended up helping Sven a lot. He sort of became his local guide,
his fixer translator, right?
Translator, and well, unfortunately, he was also the camera operator at times.
Yes.
Fabrice's style of camera operating could only be described as beautifully eccentric. That would be a kind way to describe it.
Yes, that's very well put. Very kind of you. You know what I'd love to hear? Give my listeners some idea what it's like for a filmmaker like yourself to have a project like this sort of dropped on your lap. And more than that, it's not a project that's dropped in your lap. You have footage for a potential film that's dropped in your lap. What is your approach with a film that you prior to this had no connection to, and a story that you didn't have a connection to? And how do you fashion a story out of that?
Oh gosh, well, I don't know. There's no simple answer to that. All I can tell you is that it took me way too long to figure it out, and I wish I'd sort of dug into the footage much sooner. So my advice to any documentary filmmaker would be know your footage, know what you've actually got. Because at first glance, when I looked through it, I thought, no, this isn't going to work. It's a beautiful story, but it's just not here in these tapes. And that was really not a deep enough immersion in the footage for me to have made that judgment.
Okay.
And it led to wasted time, and it led to wasted ambitions. You know, like we were talking seriously about going back to Rwanda and shooting more stuff and blah-de-blah-de-blah. And anyway,
of course, I wondered. I assumed that conversation had to have happened.
Yeah. And it wasted time. It led to, it led to fruitless sort of angst, really. And because it meant you had to end up, like I said before, asking permission to make a film. You had to try and raise money to go to Rwanda. And possibility was there, but one thing and another always got in the way, and it never happened. And I just got so exasperated in the finish. I just pulled all that footage out, loaded it up, and just started. I thought, bugger it, I'm just going to do it.
So you started assembling it.
I just started playing around with it. And I thought, well, if I think there are gaps, let's find them. Let's actually see where there's gaps.
Yeah.
And I started assembling, and it just started materializing in front of me. And I think because I'd often turned my mind to it over, it took about 3-4 years. And over that time, sometimes you're working when you're not working, like your mind's actually ticking away in the background, and you're solving things without really realizing it.
A lot of creative solutions happen when we just don't quite have the resources. Isn't that always the case with especially with documentary filmmakers, right?
Yeah, and I try and understand the character. I try and understand, what's the theme here? What is it that I really want it to say? And what is it that the characters want? And what's standing in their way? So I take a dramatic approach to try and understand the material. Mm-hmm. And then as much as possible, I try to get out of the way and just sort of let the unconscious work a little bit. But I often, I will preview and I'll review and I'll restructure like crazy. So it's sort of just letting the unconscious or the creative have its way, but then I do apply a more analytical approach and to the final structuring of the material. It's fun for me. It's what I most enjoy. I don't particularly like shooting. I don't, it's constantly stressful and disappointing, and nothing goes the way you want it to. And I've just learned to sort of just live with that and not moan and bitch too much. But the bit I enjoy is bringing it all back home and trying to make sense of it. There's 6 million directors of photography who are way better at that than I am, or ever will be.
Yeah.
But only I can shoot a film the way I can shoot a film. And they're probably not too many people are going to hire me to shoot their films, and I don't even want to be hired to shoot their films, but I do want to shoot my own because it's about the relationship I have with the subject. And if it's just me there, I will be able to get things out of them that I can't get if I've got another person there,
absolutely,
or another 2 people there. It comes down to the style of film that you want to make. I mean, I sit in movie theaters and I watch these beautifully shot documentaries with fantastic sound and lovely lighting, and frankly, I am jealous.
It's not an easy thing to admit, my friend.
But that's not the kind of film that I make when things go down. It's about being in the moment. And that's what I enjoy. That's what excites me. And actually, when I'm shooting too, because I said I didn't enjoy shooting, but there are moments of transcendence when you just feel like you can do no wrong. You feel telepathic. You're pointing the camera at the right thing, and everything works. And that makes it worthwhile for all the other times when things don't work out. But you can always get something. I have confidence in my editing. I may be a master of none, but I'm pretty good at editing.
Hey all you doc lifers, I wanted to take a quick moment to make a pretty exciting announcement. You may or may not know that this month, June 2017, marks the 1-year anniversary of the documentary life. So we are celebrating this rather momentous occasion by making a pretty momentous announcement. As of July 7th, we are expanding the show to become a weekly program. Yep, you heard that correctly. We are literally going to be doubling the output of episodes. Not only that, but we're going to be making some changes to our current format. Among other things, now each and every episode will contain a segment hosted by myself and a segment that is a shared conversation with the doc industry guest, which is basically combining elements of the 2 shows per month into 1 episode per week. So you'll be getting lots more information and inspiration in which you can apply to your own documentary life. To stay on top of more updates like this, podcast and blog notifications, film screenings, online tutorials, as well as special discounts and promotions only offered to listeners of this show, go to the website and sign up to become a Doc Lifer. That website is thedocumentarylife.com. The website contains special show notes that coincide with all episodes, the podcast archive, the TDL store, and the TDL blog, where we post the latest articles that we think will inspire and inform you to best live and lead your own documentary life. So again, head to the Documentary Life website today and sign up to become a Doc Lifer. One of my favorite moments in Act of Kindness was, and I felt like it's because I can relate to the moment, in working in a developing country. I just loved when he's sitting in his room and he just has the camera on himself and he's listening to the radio broadcast.
Oh, yeah.
And within 30 seconds, the phone calls start coming in. And then by the 9th or 10th phone call, it dawns on him, holy shit, maybe this wasn't the way to go. And then the naivete sort of sets in. And it's a great moment because I feel like in operating in developing countries, myself, I know how that sort of a situation happens, and I know how he came to the decision to do it in the first place. I totally got it. It was great.
Well, if you're interested, there's a couple of points there. The first really important point I'd like to make, and maybe this could be included in the broadcast. I mean, it's nice for me to sort of receive kudos and get nice notes back about the film, but we've got to remember that Sven was the guy on the ground that actually shot it, and that moment that you've just described, that is a brilliant piece of direction, actually. Like the presence of mind, the thought process to actually set that camera up and make sure it's running when that's happening, because that is the real deal, and he's actually thought about it, and he's made sure that the camera's rolling when it's happening, and he's got it, you know.
That's right.
So even though I might moan and groan about things he might not have got, he's got some great moments, and that was definitely one of them.
Yeah, it definitely jumped out to me.
The other thing is, and this is something that Sven sort of took some pains to make clear to me, and I did research on the genocide, but you know, so did he subsequently, and the irony is that the genocide happened because of Radio Rwanda.
Oh, absolutely. That's the first thing I thought.
Yeah, well, you would, because you're probably better informed than a lot of people. But the call to people to go out and start hacking their neighbours to death,
right? That
happened across the radio. And
That's
the irony
right.
is that, you know, that Sven's breakthrough, if you like, the ability to sort of get somewhere in his quest came through radio.
Through the radio broadcast.
Not much changes.
I know, it's amazing. Well, when he was meeting with the two women who worked for the radio station, the
Yes.
national radio station, I just thought, yeah, of course, this is what they're going to use. This is how people get their information. And oh, by the way, this is exactly how people received the quote unquote information to go out and start hacking their neighbors. Yeah, oh yeah, I made that parallel pretty quickly.
Yeah, I sort of agonized about whether to make that explicit or not, and we didn't in the end.
I'm glad you didn't. I'm glad you didn't. Yeah.
Yeah, I just decided, well, this is not a history of the genocide. It's not about that. It's about a country picking itself up and continuing to live afterwards. The thing that haunted me, and it's sort of again hinted at in the film rather than spelled out, but how do you live in a country where you know your father's murderer?
That's right. That's right.
You know, when you see them at the corner shop, and I think there's a number of movies in that, and maybe this is one of them.
Costa, it's at the heart of a lot of the work that I do, in particular in the country of Cambodia. Cambodia has become a bit of a home away from home for me, and that's something that the idea of genocide just happening, 40 years ago, and living with the people who, may have killed your family and living alongside them it's an amazing thing, and it's a heartbreaking and amazing and sometimes therapeutic thing to witness. If you've watched any documentaries about Cambodia, it seems like 9 out of 10 of those documentaries always deal with the darkness and always deal with the genocide. And our film wants to be kind of not removed from it, but sort of transcend that and bring sort of a positive message to it and tell a positive story in a country where positive stories aren't often shown in the portrayal of the country.
Yeah, I mean, it's exactly what I wanted to do as well, because when I looked at Sven's footage, I wasn't seeing a bloodbath. I was seeing people just getting on with it, just getting on with life. And what struck me was how ordinary everything seemed, and I mean, I personally just want to make films that do celebrate things like kindness and that maybe in a small way just make life a little bit better. And I also believe that art can transcend or survive anything.
Oh, wow!
Even a genocide. That ultimately, what's left when history has burned everything else away tends to be the good things or the positive things. Or I would like to think so.
Costa, let's transition a little bit now to film festivals. Give my listeners an idea of what your approach has been and your attitude has been towards film festivals from a documentary filmmaker's perspective.
Talking about film festivals, it's a fraught topic because in my own experience, I've had some success and I've had moments of sheer utter frustration. Without a film festival, I think in today's market, in today's world, without getting a good film festival premiere, it's really, really hard to justify yourself, either to yourself or to the world. Oh. Festivals are that important. They provide a focus of attention. They can bring you kudos, and not just kudos, but actual interest from people who can show your film, who can spread it further around the world, who can maybe not that often, but bring some income to you as well.
Right.
So that's all becomes possible with a good festival premiere.
Much more than simply personal validation.
Well, I got to say, I spent a lot of my life and career just getting by on personal validation rather than external. So
You
it's
and
not
me
to be
both,
sneezed
pal.
at. But when I got a film into Venice, for instance, that was a wonderful moment. It kept me going for years. And more recent times, I had a premiere at Toronto. I've had films premiering at Hot Docs. These were significant, important life events for me. And actually, they give you a career. They give you external validation as well as the internal. You've got to have both.
Did you attend Toronto or Hot Docs?
Yes, I did.
You did.
And
what was that experience like for you?
Fantastic. It was nothing like, at Toronto we showed a film called The Last Dogs of Winter, which was actually set in Canada. And at the end we got a standing ovation, and I had people coming up to me, one guy with tears in his eyes saying, "Thank you for showing me what it means to be a Canadian." I thought, well, okay, I wasn't expecting that.
Oh, that's pretty heavy. Yeah, absolutely.
And of course, they wanted to know what is a New Zealander doing in Canada making a movie.
Sure.
I asked myself the same thing. You get drawn to certain topics, you get drawn to certain subjects and characters most of all. And then if I can see a way to make the film, I'll just move heaven and earth. And most of all, I just want to make films that are makeable independently, which means that if I can do it on my own credit card, I'll do that rather than go and put out the begging bowl for money. And here's the problem, though, when it comes to film festivals, it's very, very hard, certainly in my own experience, to get noticed by a festival if you're flying your own little independent pirate flag. Like if you're just Mr. Indie guy with a little orphan film from who knows where.
Wellington, New Zealand.
I've sort of come to believe that they don't even look at them. Whereas if your film has a national badge on it, now the film I showed in Toronto did. It was funded by the New Zealand Film Commission, and there's an instant impact there, which means that when the Toronto selector comes calling, that's where they go. They go into the Film Commission office and they look at the Film Commission funded stuff. They don't go and solicit and say, "Hey, everybody on the other side of the country that didn't have Film Commission funding, show us what you've got." They don't do that. They'll go and look at the films which the funding body recommends. Look, a film can cut through. I had a film called Candyman, the David Klein story, which was about a Los Angeles candy inventor, and that didn't have New Zealand Film Commission funding. And that made it into Hot Docs. They saw it at a festival called Slam Dance.
Yeah, of course, very well known.
As it turns out, I spoke to their selector at Slam Dance. I said, why did you go for our film? And he says, well, thing is, I've got this relationship with my dad. And as soon as he said that, I knew what the answer was. Now, in that film, it's about a guy who invented the Jelly Belly jelly bean, and he's a wild sort of guy, and et cetera, but it's also a father-son story.
So that spoke to the...
Yeah. And with Last Dogs of Winter, again, I spoke to the selector, and she'd come over to New Zealand, and the Film Commission had shown her a number of films. I said, why did you pick this one? And she said, well, she's a dog lover. She's crazy about dogs. So when she saw our poster, she just went, oh, wow. I guess she was just open to it. Look, sometimes it's as flaky as that, really. And you think to yourself, well, I think I made a good film. But there's so many good films out there. So many good films. Look, it can be any number of things that a selector can go for. But the de facto truth is, if you're talking A-list festivals, if you're talking the Venice, Berlin, Cannes, Toronto, the big important festivals, their selectors go out into the world and they're getting recommendations from the big funding bodies.
That's right.
Right? And the other thing is, you're not going to see any festival in the world that's going to show more than, say, 2 or 3 maximum titles from any single country.
Right.
So the thing is, if you're from New Zealand or Australia or Britain, you're not only up against the rest of the world, you're up against your fellow filmmakers as well. So if in, say, New Zealand, there's 12 to 15 feature documentaries made here every year, well, only one or none, but certainly no more than two of those pictures are going to be selected for Toronto. And there might actually be, a good half dozen of really good films. My advice to people, and I wish I'd taken this advice with Act of Kindness, is sure, you can set your sights high, and you can dream of Cannes and Venice and all the rest, but you've got to be realistic, really. And the fact is, if yours is a little indie film without some strong, really compelling connection inside it, some strong X factor, it's not going to get selected by those big festivals. It just won't. But there are a lot of other festivals, and a lot of festivals that can do you good.
Then tell us how did MDFF, a Melbourne Documentary Film Festival, how did this happen, Costa, for Act of Kindness?
Well, very simply, you'll be aware, maybe a lot of people listening will be aware of outfits like Film Freeway and Without a Box.
Right.
These are clearinghouses, and they expedite the process of applying to film festivals, and they certainly have streamlined that process and make it a lot easier than it ever used to be. So you take your pebbles to the pond, and you throw the pebbles out and into the pond, and hopefully a ripple comes back to you. And in the case of the Melbourne Documentary Film Festival, thankfully they like the film and they've programmed it, which I'm very grateful for, because it gives a new lease of life to this title, and it brings it some attention, brings me some attention, and this is what it's about.
I have Lyndon on the program. He speaks very highly of not only of Act of Kindness, of course, but it really of you as a filmmaker as a whole. I know that he was extremely excited to see that Costa Botes had applied with a film to MDFF. So I know that he's very excited to have you a part of the program.
Well, it's very kind of him to say.
How were you informed of Act of Kindness's inclusion into the program?
I got an email, and it made a sweet contrast to a lot of rejection letters. So, and the rejection letters, by the way, they're always the same, and they always sort of beat their breasts with sadness at the fact that they got
really
so
do.
many great. And I'm like,
there was an extraordinary number of films to choose from this year, and yeah. We are sorry to say that yours was not one of them. Yeah.
See, the way I feel about that is I'd rather not hear about their problems.
Me too.
I just want to be informed that, no, you didn't get in. Next year,
I would too. I'd rather just get an email saying, here's the list that got in. That's fine. That's all I need. Yeah, that's true.
If you do get in, you tend to hear much earlier.
Yes.
The rejection letters go out woefully late, so if you do get in, you get to hear about it much earlier. And so when you see that email sitting in your in tray, that's a happy day.
Yeah, it's a happy day. It's indeed. And did you quickly inform Sven of the email that you received?
I did, and he was very happy, very happy. See, what happened was, I think by the time I got to put the movie together, I think both of us had sort of run out of so much steam. We were just thinking, well, we just want to, put it together, make it so it's there, so it exists, so we're not sort of thinking about it anymore. Yeah. And we put it out to the New Zealand Film Festival, which is quite a really good festival, by the way, the New Zealand one. It sort of revolves around the main centres, all the main cities, and a lot of the other towns as well. So it gets seen right around the country, which is great. And my ambition was simply to show it here and just get it out there, and that's it, walk away. And I didn't have any great expectations for it. And what actually happened, I don't think the festival had any great expectations for it either. And it took off, and it suddenly it sold out all its sessions, and then they were adding more sessions, and they were selling out. So we had all these, full cinemas and really enthusiastic crowds.
Yeah.
And Sven and I are looking at each other going, wow, okay. So, and I'm looking at the film going, okay, what happened here? Like, why is it working so well? So it was an interesting experience for me. And but when it was all over, we sort of thought, okay, well, maybe it's got a chance. So I went and blew a whole lot of money and put out a whole lot of festival submissions, and they all flew back to me empty. Like,
oh man, yeah, exactly.
We just couldn't get arrested. And so it's sort of, in a way, it sort of brought us back to this place where we thought, oh well, yeah, okay. But I every few months I'd take it into my head to go, oh well, I'll try this festival, I'll try that festival,
Right.
And yeah, sometimes you get lucky.
What can you tell my listeners about MDFF? I mean, obviously, I've talked to Lyndon already. I hear that you will be attending the festival. What do you know about MDFF? Are you excited about it? Is Sven going?
I'll be able to tell you more about it after I've been there. I mean,
yeah, that makes sense.
Gather,
Of course.
I can see, that it's quite an intimate event. Like we won't be playing in great big halls or anything.
Sure.
That's cool with me. I think there's a lot of engagement from what I can see, which is great.
It seems so. Yes.
The festival. This is always a good indication, actually, of the worth of an event. There seems to be a lot of really good engagement with the press and publications and online and the whole documentary making community. I've been asked to go along and do a masterclass as well.
Yes, I hear that.
Melbourne has got a pretty good film school or two there. So it just seems like it's still quite a young festival, but it seems like there's a lot of energy behind it. It seems to be very well organised, and there seems to be a lot of engagement with its audience. So, I mean, that bodes well.
I'm excited for it. He has a lot of interesting ideas, and what's kind of nice and unique about MDFF, and I think you're going to find this out pretty quickly yourself, is that because it's in its sort of infancy stage, it's only the second year of existence. He's got a lot of different ideas that he's able to incorporate, and that he will even continue in the next couple of years. And that's exciting because you can play around with ideas that maybe an established, a bigger established, dare I say, corporate festival might not be able to do, or wouldn't be able to take the kinds of risks that some of these smaller festivals can take.
I mean, this is the odd, strange contradiction. There is an audience for documentaries, a big one.
Indeed.
And if only the work itself had more value in the marketplace. I think what's really been going wrong is that, honestly, I mean, we make feature documentaries and we dream of them being up on the silver screen, but really, traditionally, the place where documentaries made money was on television. Right. And that market has gone. I mean, it's just crashed. Aside from, HBO and a few other very limited opportunities, which tend to sort of be largely in-house, or you've got to have a relationship with someone in-house.
Right.
It's pretty hard to move independent authored work, one-off authored films by people who aspire to an artistic vision, if you want to put it that way. It's very, very hard to find anywhere where you can monetize that kind of work. So, one circles back to the reality that film festivals tend to be the most important place where you can show that sort of thing. For me, it's become everything, really. I mean, I'm earning my living principally as a university lecturer. Funny how things work out. And I enjoy that very much. And I'm lecturing in film, documentary making and screenwriting. So I'm staying within my field. And my job actually, they expect me to carry on making films, so that's really wonderful.
That's great.
But it means that I can indulge my self-indulgence without any kind of commercial strictures. It's good that I make films the way I do.
In effect, this is how you're living your documentary life.
It is indeed.
The truth of the matter is, Costa, I could continue talking for hours with you. And
you're always welcome to ring me up and chat.
Well, here's the thing. We're looking to make this maybe even a two-parter, because after speaking with you, after speaking with Lyndon, and speaking to Richard Wyllie, the 5 Days of Lesvos director, it makes sense to break this up into a two-parter, and we're really looking forward to this being, in particular, a special episode where I think I know a lot of listeners and a lot of documentary filmmakers can gain a lot of valuable information from this. So I don't want to force it into one episode. So this will probably play as a two-parter. Now, what I'd like to do in the future, perhaps with you, Costa, is I'd love to have a more expansive one-on-one conversation from one documentary filmmaker to another, because again, I think you have a lot of valuable information and insight to offer a lot of my listeners. And I think, as I mentioned in email, we tread on a lot more common ground than I think than you realize. And it's always exciting to meet like-minded individuals.
Yes, well,
I really appreciate having you on the show, Costa. The film is Act of Kindness. I loved this film, and I can't wait for other people to see it. I also can't wait to hear more about MDFF after it's happened. So thank you again, Costa, for being on the program.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you, Chris.
Don't forget, we'd love to have you join us in the Documentary Academy. Come and take a look at how we can help you make your best documentary film at thedocumentarylife.com/academy. That's thedocumentarylife.com/academy. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you soon. Thanks again for listening to the show, and remember to like and subscribe to this channel. Also, remember, for any of the URLs that may or may not be outdated, and you want to get the most up-to-date information, perhaps for the documentary filmmaking courses, for the blog, for other episodes, just go ahead and check in the show notes below on this YouTube page, and that'll give you the correct URLs to use. Thanks again. Have a great day.